You're supposed to say hello.
Oh, hello. Welcome to the Circle of Dads, the space for sharing stories about the struggles and triumphs of fatherhood and learning to become better men.
Welcome to the Circle of Dads podcast. My name is Ryan Young. I'm your host, and I'm here with Debbi Dunbar. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you so much for recording with me.
Oh, I've
Again.
been looking forward to it, right?
Yeah.
I was so glad that we got to do it again.
We did one before, and my engineer told me it was not very good, so we're going to redo it. Apparently, using a cell phone in a coffee shop is not the best idea. So here we are.
All right.
So tell me about yourself.
Well,
Who are you?
I am Debbi Dunbar. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm located here in Fort Worth, Texas, and I have a small private practice. And I think one of the things I like to say is I help people live inside their skin a little bit more comfortably and manage things in life that come up for them. And I work with a variety of different experiences from recent events, trauma, ongoing trauma. I do some work with mothers and their daughters and families, help people overcome whatever it is that they're working through in that moment.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So you're, working with mothers and daughters. What's that like? Is that like a, you just kind of talk them both off the ledge, or teach them how to communicate with each other?
That's basically it, how to communicate. It's pretty interesting to me. I find that in this day and age, a lot of parents are afraid to parent. They are looking a little bit more at being friends. And so as a result, they either overparent or underparent. What I mean by overparent is sometimes there's a little bit too much punishment. And punishment basically teaches kids how to punish themselves when they grow up. And it typically it sets up a sense of struggle. However, there is this thing called natural consequences for one's behavior. And one of the things I run into quite often with mothers in particular, and dads as well, but I see more moms, is that they want to rescue their children from pain. And I get it. That's a wonderful thing. You don't want your children to hurt, of course, right?
Sure.
But at the same time, a little bit of pain is how we learn. We learn through three things: pain, pleasure, and repetition. And so many times, experiencing natural normal consequences, they're uncomfortable. And that is how we learn. And so, I teach, I work with them on communication, respect, natural consequences on par with whatever the behavior was.
Boundaries.
What does respect look like? What does it mean in their family? Because I don't know what respect looks like in their family, but I can foster that conversation between mother and daughter and our family members.
Sure. I can understand that, because I know with my daughter, we have, I don't want to get into too many details in case she listens to this. I don't want to embarrass her and, cause more issue. But, there's things like learning to choose your battles. I remember expressions like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And it's teaching her proper boundaries and respect. She just turned 12, and her mother and I are in a co-parenting environment, I guess you would call it. And so she goes back and forth from house to house, and the rules are slightly different. And definitely the atmosphere is different. But the message is the same, So she will try to get away with anything she can. And I expect that, because she's 12. She's acting just how a 12-year-old should, and she's the only child. And, I was not an only child, so I can't relate to that necessarily. But, for instance, it's things like hygiene. That there was a situation the other night, and it's like, hey, make sure you wash your hair. Okay. And because if you don't wash it, I'm going to wash it for you. It's gotten to that point. And, it got washed. I'm using air quotes, but she just rubbed water on it and came back. And
it's all washed, Dad.
yeah, and I smell her hair, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. And then I could have just said, and her mother and I have talked about it since, because I could have just said, if that's how you want to take care of yourself, well, that's fine. I mean, I think you could do more, but good night. And let her deal with that consequence. Let her deal with the greasy hair and her friends making fun of her and stinky hair and whatever. That's her thing. I think sometimes shame is a good motivator. We worry so much about, people hurting or people being mean to us or our kids and feeling ashamed, and we don't want them to feel any of that stuff. But I want my daughter at times to feel shame.
Appropriate levels, right.
Yeah.
Shame, the way I look at shame, there's so many different people and different books and different authors on what shame is and isn't. And I like the Jacques Panksepp version of shame, and it's an innate affect, aka emotion, that helps us live in a society. Humans are pack animals, right? So the way shame is, even all mammals have a sense of shame, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it helps you live within your community, within your pack. And if we had no shame, well, let's face it, we would just all walk around naked and taking other people's things all the time, right? So shame kind of helps us live within our pack, within our group, within our culture. I was sharing with a person I get to work with the other day, and in our culture, it's unacceptable to pick your nose in public. Right? Shame is that affect that usually occurs right around your diaphragmatic area that gets a tight, heavy sinking feeling that keeps you from walking around in public, picking your nose, like you and I sitting here talking. That natural affect of shame keeps me from picking my nose while I'm sitting here talking with you. Well, let's say we lived, I believe it's in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
It's not offensive to pick your nose in Korea.
Okay.
Right. And so in their culture, that's an acceptable behavior. So if you're in Korea and you're in a business meeting, you're picking your nose, nobody really cares.
Not a big deal.
Right. So in America, we have a different culture, and that's unacceptable here.
It's interesting.
And so shame kind of helps us live within our society, within our culture, within our pack, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And without it, we don't know where the boundaries are. And so it's a loud affect, and it occurs right in your gut, and it's kind of heavy, tight, and it feels uncomfortable. And we want to listen to that because it helps us guide our decisions. So allowing your daughter sometimes, and it's a parenting call, right? There's over 500 ways to do one thing right. I heard that once and I love it. So, it could be a judgment call. It might be interesting to allow her to go to school with dirty, stinky hair and see what her friends do. That natural, I need to fit into my group might kick in. And if they tease her a little bit, she comes home and she goes, Dad, I feel so bad. I got teased today. You could talk about it. Oh, because my hair is greasy. Oh, honey, that must have been difficult. What can we do with that?
Yeah.
Right?
And that sounds awesome, that dialogue, but the way it would go, and I know most of the guys are like, yeah, there's no way I'm saying that shit. I'd be like, I told you you're going to smell bad.
Right.
But you don't want to talk to your kid that way, especially your daughter. And maybe boys are different, but I know like with my daughter, my focus is to teach her to be strong and be independent and be powerful and be assured of herself, but also to be kind and to be loving and to, I don't know, not be a ball buster, not just be mean to people because she's, I've overplayed it. Now she's arrogant. So there's that fine line of teaching her how to be. And honestly, there's times she just doesn't give a fuck. I mean, I'm like, are you sure you want to go to school with, okay? And she's like, man, I look awesome. I'm like, all right, well, at least you're confident. And there's something to be said about that.
Allowing her to have her voice and her decision, it's allowing her space to be who she is. That's a very loving act.
Yeah.
Very loving.
I've always told her kind of like, in so many words, let your freak flag fly. Like, just do your thing. Just do you and be good at it and be confident in it and don't follow the crowd. But at the same time, as her dad, I'm like, no, you got to wash and brush your hair so the crowd doesn't make fun of you. So, I mean, it's that bounce. Yeah. But the other night, instead of just letting it go, it was 10 o'clock at night. We had a long day, and it was a great day. It was just her and I together, and man, the wheels came off, and it was a colossal meltdown. And I could have just said, go to bed, we'll talk about it later. But instead, I had to display that dominance and be right. And then it was just a shitstorm. So, you're picking your battles. Know when to say, no, this is what you're going to do.
And the other thing that's so interesting is that once we're in a battle, for lack of a better word, when we're kind of aware and mindful of what we're doing, how we're participating, it's always an option when we're aware of it to kind of pause and give ourselves a timeout and even de-escalate the situation and say, oh, you know what, Dad needs a timeout.
Right.
I'm going to pause and let's take a timeout. And one of the things that does is it allows space for you to not be a perfect parent. It allows space for you to admit when you're wrong, and it allows space for her to do the same thing. Because there is no such thing as perfection, really. We're always learning, moment to moment to moment, and we get the opportunity to update and adjust as we go along. And so we can always stop, whether it's with a child, with a partner, with a spouse, with a friend, with a stranger on the street. When we notice ourselves showing up in a way that we don't even agree with, we can push our pause button and just pause. Take a minute, take a deep breath, exhale, connect to the ground, and then re-enter the conversation when our system is lowered, for lack of a better word. We're de-escalated, right? I like to say 0 to 10. If we're 6 or greater, it might be an okay thing. If we're having conversation, right? It might be an okay thing to pause and maybe see if we could turn our dial down to, 3, 4, 5, right? So, especially when dealing with children, because what that does is it really sets up a struggle, right? It sets up that resistance. It's physics. Every action has an equal opposite reaction. And when we force, they're going to force back.
Yeah.
I never had children, but I do recall being a child and observing my dad, who had an incredible temper and forced a lot of things. I can recall observing him with my brother as well as experiencing him with myself. It was tough.
Yeah. There's, and sometimes I wonder if she just wants the drama, like if she needs it, because I think of, things like even bad press is good press, just any reaction, any kind of, because I'm noticing her at that point, and her presence is there, and she's being seen, no matter what light it's in.
Yeah.
And it is difficult, but then on the flip side, I know that that's just part of her finding her way. And it's my job as her guide and her dad to not allow her to go down that road. And so actually, I feel, so the other night, for example, when I got done and stepped back and saw how it went, I was like, man, that's all on me. 100% that was on me, because I'm the adult. I'm 37. I should act like a 37-year-old. I'm acting like she's acting the age she's supposed to act. I need to act the age that I'm supposed to act. And it would have been so much easier for me to just step away and be like, no, we're not going to do that tonight. Good night. Dry your hair off. Brush your teeth if you want.
But isn't that one of the things that makes you such a great dad, Ryan, is that, learning always occurs in the rearview mirror. Hindsight is 20/20. These phrases are out there because they're real, right?
Right.
And so, so you kind of unpacked the situation and you learned from it. That's what makes you a great dad.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's pretty cool stuff. So now you have new information. And perhaps you'll do this same thing 2 or 3, 4 more times. You'll unpack it, deconstruct it, if you will. And then maybe the 4th or 5th time you'll learn something different, and you'll be in the moment and you'll go, oh, wait, I don't have to do it this way. I have options. Yeah. And that's also the other thing that's so cool is you're allowing your space to grow, your self space to grow. You're seeing yourself. You're being with yourself. You're noticing what you're doing. And your daughter benefits from that, because whether she knows it or not, she's observing you doing this. So she knows it's okay not to be perfect and to learn from mistakes. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really pretty cool stuff.
Thank you. And I will say that largely I credit that to you and the work that we've done together. Obviously the reason that I had you on or have you on is because I love you and you're one of my favorite people, but also the work that you do with children and their relationships with themselves and adults and the relationship with their inner child and just how they both mesh and how we can just generally go through life a little easier on ourselves and others. And, I've learned so much from you in that regard, that is a lot of the thing. That was the catalyst to starting this, because this was going to happen. It was already in my mind, but as we were doing more and more work together, it just pushed it forward that much quicker. And because I can see the importance of this while I see the importance in what you do. And so thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. As I'm listening to you, I can feel my heart melting and swelling at the same time, because you know how much I love you. And you're such an impactful person in my life, and you've changed me so much just knowing you and being friends with you over the years. And then the work that we've been able to do together, it changes me too. So I feel blessed. I am blessed. Yeah. And doing that inner child work is so powerful, because there's a great book out there, Dan Siegel, and I want to say The Child Within. And what I'll do is I'll make sure at the end of the podcast I give you the actual name. I'm probably not giving the proper name of the book. But what it does is it really kind of helps parents parent themselves.
Sure.
So that they could be better, reparent themselves, so they could show up differently with their children. And one of the things that I heard you talking about earlier is that I'm 37. It's for me to act like a 37-year-old, and it's for my daughter to act like a 12-year-old. And I found myself acting like a 12-year-old, and she was too, right? And so one of the things that Dan Siegel talks about a lot is it the developing brain? Oh, I'll get it. Now it's bothering me. I'm trying to remember the name of the book. It's not coming to me. Anywho, Dan Siegel, what he talks about is as we go back and we reparent ourselves, because all adults have unmet developmental needs. It's just the facts, it's just going to happen. That's what adulthood is all about, is recovering from childhood.
Right.
And fulfilling those unmet needs that our parents did the best they could, and they're not going to meet them all, right? So as we reparent ourselves from our early life wounds, then we're less likely to get that activated. The 12-year-old in you is less likely to get activated by the 12-year-old in your beautiful daughter. And so, but also what you're doing is you're showing up and you're unpacking and learning from your behaviors. So by default, you are reparenting your inner 12-year-old that didn't have the kind of parent that you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool stuff.
That was another thing that I know shapes me. I'm not going to say it's a crutch or it's my identity anymore. There for a while, once I started doing work in it, I kind of used it as a crutch for an identity. And I know everybody in my life did the best they could do. Nobody woke up in the morning and was like, I'm going to be an asshole to Ryan. They're just not that type of people. I mean, the people in my life are good, salt of the earth people. I just don't think that emotionally they were equipped to parent someone like me. And there was some other issues there that happened, but also not having a father around, and that was difficult. So moving forward as a parent, learning to parent, a lot of times it's not so much even reparenting, it's just parenting, period. Like there was things that I just didn't know how to do.
Right. And by default, and when I'm so glad you said that, by default, when I'm saying reparenting, I'm saying kind of meeting the needs that weren't met as a child,
Sure.
Right? So we become our own parent to that child within that in some ways is kind of stuck in time because they didn't get the needs met that needed to be met back there. So in many ways, we're the perfect person today to go back and do some healing within our system and within ourselves so that we show up differently today and we're able to be our age, if you will, here in the moment.
Yeah.
And I really see that you're doing that. And a large part of being able to do that is what you were talking about earlier, being compassionate with self, allowing space for yourself to be who you are, learning from your mistakes, knowing when you made a mistake. And typically, I'm pretty sure it's your gut that guides you, right? Oh, man, this is hot. This is heavy. I'm observing myself acting in a way I'd prefer not act. And then as we do that and we're paying attention to where we're at in the moment, that's really how we learn.
Yeah. And for y'all listening, she's pointing to her sternum, just under her chest there. And that's, for me, that's where shame shows up. And you talk to grown men, especially alpha males or guys of that type of personality about this stuff, and most of the time you get that look like well, man, I don't know about my inner child, man. But you know what I found is more and more guys that I work with, more and more guys that I talk to, regardless of who they are or what type of personality, they can hear that. There's something that hits home with that, because we'll do things that we know are not in line with our moral code or with how we would want to have been parented, or however you want to say that. And I think the stepping off point is, do they ignore that and just continue in that path because they're just going to trudge through and they just are purely driven by ego at that point? Or do they step back and say, man, I've got to listen to this. This doesn't feel right. And then start to do work. And I see that a lot of men don't want to do work on that.
And you know, it's so fascinating. That's one of the reasons I say that I try to, my tagline, if you will, is to help people live with inside their skin. When you're talking about your sternum, it's right above your diaphragm. There's all these nerves that innervate right there, and all of our affect shows up right there, right in your sternum, right in that area. Things that are pleasant. So even right now, if you think about the sweetest thing your daughter's done this last week, something that you just think, oh my gosh, that was the sweetest thing she's done. I just love my daughter so much, right? And as you're seeing that image in your mind, notice what's happening right in your diaphragmatic sternum area, right?
Sure.
What are you noticing?
It's a sensation.
Is it pleasant or unpleasant?
It's pleasant.
Yeah, right? And so that's affect. It's very pleasant. And then if you think about how you acted the other night when, you know, maybe there was a little bit of struggle going on, and we've been talking about that, and just kind of notice how you were with that, and notice what you saw in her face with that, and what are you noticing in your diaphragmatic area?
A knot.
That's right. That's affect guides all decision. It's really incredible. So I think for the majority, what we're taught to do is shut down from the neck down. And the problem with shutting down from the neck down is that we don't, our gut is not our guide.
Right.
And then when we can tune into the gut, it helps make decisions. It helps us make decisions in the moment. And when I say a lot of people are shut down from the neck down, I also want to, say that I'm also biased because of the type of work I do. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that are not shut down from the neck down.
It's just what you're around.
That's part, that's what I work with. So,
Sure.
Helping people get in tune with their bodies. Polyvagal theory is very fascinating if anybody wants to look that up.
Yeah.
Learn more about that.
What, and all of this stuff that you're referencing, I'll put in the show notes so that they can find it at the end.
Oh, okay.
And then the links and any information that they need. So what brought you to this line of work and where you are? And
originally, my background is fitness. That's what I did for many years, and I did a little stint in marketing and sales, which was very helpful. My whole life has been about helping others. It's kind of the thread, if you will, that weaves, even in marketing and sales. I was marketing for Dale Carnegie, helping people feel better, and that was sales, and marketing was for Health South. Right. So I had a small fitness business, and one of the ladies I was working with said, Deb, you really ought to be a therapist. And I'm like, no, thank you.
If you knew what went on in my head.
I don't know about that. And she actually kind of we continued to talk about that. And she's like, I think you would be a really great therapist. And so originally when I got into, and all the cards just fell together. And originally when I went back to school, I wanted to work with eating disorders, primarily because that's what I noticed so much in the fitness field over the years. And then as I was going through school and kind of selecting my specialty, I was also in therapy myself. And my therapist said, Debbie, you really, really, really ought to go and be a trauma therapist. And I'm like, what? She said, yeah. I think you'd be a great trauma therapist. Of course, I've had my own early life trauma, quite a bit of it. And so working through that kind of gives me perhaps a different insight, that first of all, it's possible to heal trauma. It's possible. Second of all, it's possible to reparent, if you will, our inner childs that have those developmental deficits. Developmental deficits. It's possible to do that. And so I know that because I've lived it, and I get to work with other people and watch them do it. And so it's just kind of been an unfolding the door was open and I went through it, and the door was open and I went through it, and then, oh wait, this door is open, and then here I am.
Followed your path.
I followed my path. And the other thing that's so fascinating, I think is interesting, is in about 2000, I was living in New Jersey, working in New York City, and I went to a therapist because I was having some issues at work, and I was watching this light bar go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it wasn't until I went to grad school and started to decide what I wanted to do that I found out that that was EMDR. And it was so helpful for me, and I am a certified EMDR therapist now, and it's the therapy of choice. I think it helps people the quickest.
What's the elevator pitch on EMDR?
That is a great question. And the elevator pitch on EMDR, basically what we do is we use the brain's natural capacity to heal, and we tap into that.
Okay.
So the therapist isn't doing the healing. We have a protocol that we use that was set up and put together. I'm trying to find the right words. Francine Shapiro came across the brain's natural capacity to heal. Mm-hmm. Did a lot of research, created a protocol, did more research, and here we are all these years later. She is the, I want to say developer, but that's not the proper word. She's the person that... Founder, yeah, of EMDR therapy. Trailblazer, I like it, yes. And so it's much like if you were to break your bone, right? You would go to the doctor would set the bone, put it in a cast, and your body heals, right? The doctor doesn't heal you. The body heals. Well, the brain is set up the exact same way. So trauma is kind of something that's stored in a stuck state, if you will. Mm-hmm. And through the EMDR protocol, what we help the brain do is tap into other parts of the brain, non-trauma parts of the brain, if you will. And they connect with each other, and then the brain is able to heal itself, and some meaning is made of the event. We can't undo past events. That's not possible. However, what we can do is leave them in the past. So the brain, in essence, reconsolidates the memory as, wow, it's not happening now. It was a really horrible event or events. And it's over. And some learning is made from it.
Sure. I had a TBI when I was a child, a traumatic brain injury, and it really hurt me. It was actually, a half mile from where we're sitting on this patio. And so that happened when I was 6. And I had an enclosed head injury, and it crushed all the bones in my inner ear. And, they had to resuscitate me, I believe, twice. And so they said, as he matures, I use that term loosely, but as he matures, you'll notice some erratic behavior and some issues with just how he develops and things like that. So that was kind of the blanket that I operated under and how I was treated, I think, as a child and growing up. And but I don't think that was necessarily the case, because upon doing work with you and doing the EMDR therapy, it took me back to something that I couldn't remember, because I can't remember my childhood. Mm-hmm. There's like very, very, very few things that I can remember, and they're just little blips. And it's like just watching a quick shot of a movie that I don't understand what the movie's about, But by doing that work, it took me back to a place, and it was just as real as us sitting right here. And it was terrifying, because it was just like, oh my God, I haven't thought about this ever. Mm-hmm. But I could see it. I could see what happened. Mm-hmm. I was able to intervene, and this traumatic point this traumatic moment in my life, and then take myself out of that situation and care for my younger self, and then address the threat. It was fascinating. I remember that very well.
And I want to pause real quick. What you and I were doing was some, I want to say, advanced EMDR type work, right? And one of the things that you and I were doing was reparenting. That's a form of reparenting, taking that stuck memory and taking that little guy out of there and bringing him into the present, so that your amazing dad self today can tend to him and give him what he didn't get back there, which was to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted. Like, yes, you're hurting, and to be with and comforted and to be protected, right? So the little guy didn't get that, so he was stored in a stuck state. Mm-hmm. And the work that you and I were able to do with the advanced training, EMDR, is go help that little guy come into the present. So that is over. He's safe now. He's no longer stuck in that activated state. He's in a place where he's accepted and nurtured and protected in your adult self.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. It sounds woo-woo, doesn't it?
It does.
When I first heard about this stuff, I'm like, you are crazy, right? Nut jobs. But however, as I've gone back and I've reparented myself, and, this is going to sound woo-woo also, but I also reparented both of my parents.
Sure.
As though they had what they could have been if they were brought up in more functional, loving homes, right? What kind of parents they could have been as they showed up for me and my brother. And it's so powerful how much relief comes from that. How much relief. So, yes.
Well, you say, it's woo-woo, and I get that 100%, especially where we live and kind of the mindset of this area and things like that, and it's coming along, but it's predominantly a conservative, very very devout in their faith, and so that's the only solution, and it's checking my levels here, Trent, so check. I think we're good. Okay. Can you cut all that out, please? So, but, you say reparenting your parents, and that doesn't even assign blame.
No, it does not.
Like if somebody would hear that, they're like, well, I could never do that because my dad was great, or because for whatever, or, like I wouldn't want my kid doing that to me. I'm doing the best I can. Whatever you get hung up on, right?
Right.
It doesn't matter because, in my opinion, because it's a journey. You're trying to get somewhere. How you get there is your business. So whatever you can do to sleep, to not have this pent up resentment to your parents or this crutch or whatever it is showing up as with you, whatever helps, I think you should do.
Absolutely. And everybody has their own path and their own way to go. And I was brought up two career military people, and they were brought up in military households. So it was very much, you just soldier on. You just suck it up. You stop crying, or I'll give you more to cry about. Or they would say something to cry about, which is actually kind of a hoot.
Yeah.
I obviously had something to cry about, or I would not have been crying, thank you very much, right? So anywho, you just sucked it up and soldiered on. That's what you did. Wantless, needless, look good, do it right the first time. That's all a joke, right? So how is that even possible? So, as I kind of grew up, I know for fact, and there was some yucky stuff going on in my early life that's, it's not, there's no need to talk about it now, but it was pretty unpleasant. And I still don't blame my parents, right? Blame, it doesn't help. They did the best they could with what they had, and some of it was quite harmful. And so here I am in my adulthood. It's mine to clean up, right? And the parents out there that did have also some yucky things happen in their childhood, we don't have to repeat what was done to us. We can heal the child within. We could go back and reparent those wounds and those developmental deficits so that we could show up in a whole different fashion for the next generation. And that's also what I feel so blessed to do, is I get to help people not carry on that thing, those behaviors that really started 2 to 3 generations before they were a thought. It's beautiful and amazing. EMDR can do these things.
And that's a good point, because that stubbornness that most men have, I think, this is just how it is. Or not even just men. I mean, just people, because we're all so flawed, and we're also driven by our egos and our pride. And ego is great. I mean, ego, good. There's good and bad to that, but things that happen generationally, so whatever happens, they didn't just come up with that. Right. They were taught that.
They learned it, yes, absolutely, from their environment. Yes.
Somewhere, somehow, there was an input that made them think that that's how things are supposed to be, or that's okay, or whatever. And so that continues. And, for anyone that's just kind of having a hard time, I mean, I don't doubt you're having, or I don't think you're having a hard time, but just like racism, let's use that for an example. Like, I grew up, everyone used the N-word. We're down here in the South in Texas, and I grew up around construction. I grew up around concrete guys and framers and carpenters. And if there was a black guy working for him, it was his name with the N word in front of it. And to this day, I hate that word. And I don't know. I think it was, I don't know how I missed that.
Right.
That behavior. I'm so glad that I did. But everybody spoke that way. And everyone was racist. Well, that I can remember that used that word, they were racist, obviously. But there was people in my family that were not. But like, these were all in a line. They were all father, son, you know what I'm saying? And so when it got to me, I just didn't bite. I always felt like that just never sat with me. And I think what happened was I witnessed somebody being referred to as that, and I saw this grown man who I thought was, larger than life, strong, vibrant, this cool black man named Charlie, and he was just cool. I mean, he was nice to me, and then I heard them refer to him that way, and they were doing it like they were. It was an interesting thing, but I saw the reaction on his face, and I remember as a child like reading that body language and thinking that's not right. And then, so with that being said, is you have a choice. Like, you can see these behaviors and stop them so generationally it doesn't continue. If you were beat as a child and you get mad and you pop your kid and you think that's how I was, or that's how I was raised and I'm fine. Well, obviously you're not, because you just hit your kid, and there's spanking, but there's also hitting, like
Correct, it's different.
attacking or humiliating. And so I see that with people, and I know now socially we're getting a little more aware, or a lot more aware, but yeah, so that's just a kind of a little rabbit hole I went in whenever you were saying that. Anyways.
Yeah, connecting a lot of things. So, we cannot update what we're unaware of. And that's where the practice of mindfulness comes in, to where we're conscious and we're aware of what we're doing from moment to moment as best as possible. And when we're mindful and when we're in our skin, when we're in our bodies, when we're present, then we can observe what we're doing. And so many times, back to that whole 0 to 10 scale I was talking about, where 0 is neutral and 10 is as activated as you could be. When we're 7, 8, 9, 10, when we're up there, we're not in our bodies. We're not present. Because somehow, somewhere, there's some form of a threat, I'm using air quotes, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, connectedly, relationally, right? And so we're not in our bodies. We're not as present. And so we just kind of react based on what we've seen in life and what we know to do. So it's almost as though we're not present. So these parents, when they were hit as children and they hit their kids, it's not I'm not giving them an out. However, I am sharing that if we're that activated, we're just going to do what we know. That's part of the reason that we want to be mindful. We want to be present. We want to notice, where are we, 0 to 10 in the moment? Because if I'm a mom and I'm at 8, 9, 10 and my kid is doing something, it's time for me to take a time out, or I'm going to repeat what I know. That's just the way the body works.
And the kid doesn't know that, so they're going to keep going.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, they might have just won because they're emotional terrorists. And that's...
I don't know about that.
That's...
They're kids being kids.
However you want to look at it.
It must feel that way.
I bet a lot of people right now are shaking their head yes.
Yeah.
But, we make light of it. But thank you, because I forgot where I was going, and then you picked it up perfectly, because, yes, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
So you don't know that your behavior is not the way you want to be.
Until you're right. Until we're aware. And then we're like, wow, man, I don't even like that. What am I doing? I don't even agree with how I'm acting. That's a trippy experience.
Because, I would think if you're at that point with your child is battling you, and they're trying to get a reaction out of you, whether it's they just want the drama, or they want the attention, or they want to just be right, or they're just bucking the system, they're going to keep going. They don't know that mom's, like, reaching the tipping point. They don't see that it's about to get into the red, And
that's mom's job, right?
Exactly.
To be the parent, and
moms and dads.
And dads, right? That's mom's job. Dad's job is to be the parent. I can remember when I was little, and my dad, he would just fly off. He was not in his body. He was hit, obviously, as a kid, and he was a two-tour Vietnam vet, medic out there with the Marines, and so he had a lot of horrific things in his life. And when he would fly off the handle, it would just be this, fly off. And, now as a trauma therapist and an adult, I mean, the man didn't know what he was doing. He wasn't there. He was just operating, unconscious operating, right? And so, anyways, it doesn't make it right, but it's also fascinating that we want to be in our bodies as much as possible. And I encourage anybody listening to learn more about mindfulness, presence, and even 3 to 5 minutes a day. Literally, that's all it takes.
And there's so much, there are so many resources available that can give it to you in bite-sized pieces to where if you have an iPhone and you have a car or a set of headphones or whatever, you can listen to it, via podcasts or Audible or what. You don't just have to sit down and read it. So, I mean, if you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't like to read or I don't have time, I call bullshit. We make time for what's important. And if you're listening to this, then being a good dad is important. Being a good parent, being a good influence to a child is important. That just find a way to take the time to better yourself every day in that aspect. And even if you're just looking at the end of the day and taking an inventory of yourself, like, how did I react? How could I have changed the things I've done? How could I have handled things differently?
And what did I do really well?
Oh, yeah.
And what can I learn from, right? And the other thing I kind of want to go back to address is that, kids pick up the energy from their parents, right? And a kid's job as they're growing is to push the system, especially if they're intelligent. They're gonna push back a little bit because they're growing, they're developing, they're learning, right? And the parents' energy, kids, actually all of us, I heard this first with kids, kids act out what they don't have words for. Adults do that too, right? And so, again, I'm going to go back to encouraging the parents to stay in their skin and to kind of notice where they're at, because kids pick up on parents' energy. And of course, I don't have children. I want to be real clear on this. I don't have kids. So it's, some of this stuff is easy for me to say, right? And but I practice as best I can, and I encourage everybody to do the same thing. So I want to make sure that it's real clear that I don't have children, so I don't have firsthand experience. However, I work with a lot of people that are parents, and I had parents. I was a child, so. And I do also work with 18 and over, typically 18 and over. So I'm more of an adult therapist than a child therapist. However, I do help people heal their inner children.
Right. And so, and real quick, I want to touch on, you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. You said it's easy for you to say that. Knowing you, I would probably say that it's not, that you'd have to be really confident in what you're saying to be able to say it. So you probably spend a lot of time laboring over the information and the data and knowing that you can say this and speak honestly from yourself. And I guess confidently, again, to use that word. I mean, it's not like you're just throwing some stuff out there like, hey, man, you can't hit your kid, and like you, well, yeah, that's easy to say. You try.
Right. You know what I find so fascinating is the people that were hit as children, you know what that teaches your kid to do when they grow up? Hit themselves verbally, emotionally, when they don't do it right? In an ideal world, when the kid doesn't do it right, you go up and you go, yeah, so what can we learn from that?
Yeah.
Wow. And, allow space for them to fail, allow space for them to get hurt, and love them when they're failing, hurting, not achieving their goal, and love them when they're succeeding, thriving, and kicking ass, right? And so, there's something to learn from both of those. But when kids are hit, what they learn, hit themselves. Oh, I didn't do it right. Bam, 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 bam. And it takes a lot to override that, to reparent that, to correct that, because it becomes so natural in our systems.
It was literally beat into you.
And things that are laid down with high emotion stay a long time. Yeah.
I'm an emotional guy, so I got to keep it pretty level. Yeah, you're talking about, what can we learn from that? Just so everyone here knows, the reason I started this podcast was because at heart, I feel like I'm a knucklehead and I need all the help I can get. So selfishly, I did this so I could just kind of take from all the, the advice that I get and then pooling it together.
And give. You do that well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I relay.
Yeah.
I relay. And to just prove that I do not think I'm a perfect father, or I am flawed. You were talking about what can we learn from this. So my 12-year-old daughter may or may not know the expression FGO now, which is fucking growth opportunity. And so we were talking about something one day, and I said, well, baby girl, we're just going to have to call this an FGO. And she just looked at me, and, well, she does not let anything go, so I had to explain it to her in detail, and she gets it now. So I'll tell her, hey, it's an FGO, and she understands exactly what it means. I'm not one of those guys that if I feel it's necessary to say fuck, I say it. I don't abuse it. It's not in my everyday language, but my daughter has heard me cuss.
Well, here's the deal. She's also heard a ton of other people cuss.
Right.
So it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And that's another parenting choice too, right? I've talked to some men that say, I will not use, foul language in front of my children. And some men say, I will. And I say, it's your house, your rules. You get to do what you feel is the right thing to do as a parent.
Yeah, and I've heard that confuses them.
What do you mean?
Well, as far as talking that way in front of them, but not allowing them to talk that way.
Yeah, monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah. So, I just tell her that those are adult words, and that's how I express myself in situations like these. And I've gone back and forth. There's also a whole lot of backstory to that we won't get into, because that's a whole different podcast. But yeah, anyways, and also it's just a way. I want to show up exactly as I am to my daughter. She gets to see Dad for who he really is. She gets to see me in all of my glory, flawed. She gets to see the highs, the low, not all the lows. I try not to be, I don't take her through the emotional roller coaster that I've been through
Good.
intentionally. She may have seen because of just reactions to things, but what she does see is the type of man that I am in all of most of my imperfections. And I admit that to her. I make amends to her. Like, if I do something that wasn't right, I come back to her, and I've heard people say you don't want to do that because it makes it to where they don't respect you or they won't trust you.
What? Really? People say that?
I have heard that. Not from doctors, not from counselors, but from other parents, and I think that's bullshit. I think I need to teach my daughter to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, because that's a powerful thing that I did not learn until I was 30.
Right.
I was told I was sorry for a long time, but I was never actually able to just say, man, that wasn't right. I apologize. That's not how I want to be. That's not the dad I want to be. You deserve better than that. And I think that's a way that I stay connected with her.
That's right. Because when we err, it's supposed to feel bad.
Yes.
And that's our gut going, alerting us that feels bad. Well, the cool news about when we're staying in tune with our skin, shame, the way I'm using it here based on the Panksepp work that was referenced earlier, shame is cultural, like social, right? Because we're social creatures. And guilt is our own moral compass. So when we act out of line in a way that we don't believe in, it feels bad right in your sternum area or your diaphragmatic area. And it feels bad because it's supposed to feel bad. It's like your gut getting your brain's attention saying, hey, stop it. That feels bad. Don't do that, right? So when we feel bad, we want to pay attention to it. So we could do just what you talked about, which is the repair. Like, we own our behavior. We amend it the best I can. And amend means to update and change the best we can, so that we get to feel this other side of the affect over here on the other end of the spectrum, which is, and again, this is not a word a lot of people like to use it this way, but it's called pride. And the way I'm using pride is like, I did good. I helped someone, I repaired an error, and it feels good because it's supposed to feel good, because that is our gut telling our brain, look, if I make an error, I can address it, update it, do something different, and then I can feel good about it. And it feels good, so we repeat that. So our gut is powerful.
And we get away from that stubbornness that I'm right, or I'm gonna hold strong. You're fucking wrong. You can feel it, but you're just sitting there like tight-lipped, like, nope, it's fine. So one thing I would say, and this speaks directly to the guys out there that have a child that goes back and forth to two houses.
Ooh, right.
So what I've experienced a lot is she comes over to my house, and it's a different environment. I'm completely different than her stepdad. Her mom and I, are different. We're friends now, but there's a reason why we didn't work out. Our personalities are completely different. And so sometimes, depending on where my daughter's at and where I'm at, it takes us almost the whole time together to get into a groove. She's not doing this right. Everything's kind of annoying. Like it's just, I'm not used to being around you. And then other times, it's like we've never missed a beat. And I'm going to take that. I'll take most of the responsibility on that because I can control that. I can't control her. So I know that I can prepare myself to always kind of try to get in that rhythm. And one thing that I do with that rhythm is just like you have to pair your phone to something, like a device to an accessory that hasn't been around. I need to pair with my daughter. So when I see her, I hug her, and I hug her tight, and I hug her for a long time. And, usually her mouth is already running. She's talking 90 miles an hour, and I just hold her as quick as I can and try to pour my love and my energy into her, at least so she can feel it. And that might sound kind of woo-woo to some people, but I don't care. It works. And I think that just connects us. Instead of me just showing up and, so I heard your mom said you did this, this, and this, and so she's getting it from me too, and so she doesn't feel safe anywhere. That co-parenting situation is not ideal, but it is what most of us are in. And so you have to make the best of it, and it can actually be a good thing. I know that there has been many, many, many times that the day that she goes home, I go home, I do my thing, and then I get into bed, and about 11 o'clock at night, I wake up and I feel this horrendous sense of guilt for everything that went on. I could have done this differently. I could have done this differently. I was an asshole. That's not how I should have spent our time, or that wasn't an activity that she enjoyed. That was just her dragging her along with stuff I wanted to do. And, and then you get that guilt, you get that shame, and your little girl's at home. I'm not saying if that's accurate or not, and if that's just me beating myself up.
Yeah, I'm thinking that that's a wonderful opportunity when you notice yourself doing that to also kind of, that's learned as well, right?
Sure.
Feeling bad when our gut is loud when we act out, right? When we act against our moral compass or against social norms. And it feels bad to get our attention so that we can repair and learn new and different, right? We could do that. Opposite action or the one that works more within our value system, right? And so when we have our own shame spiral going on inside our own heads or our own guilt spiral going on inside our heads, I woulda, coulda, shoulda, that's a wonderful time for us to pause and go into that with some kindness and some compassion, right? Kindness and compassion isn't being a wimp.
No.
Kindness and compassion calms the nervous system enough so that we can learn different and do different. So when we're in that spiral and we're telling ourselves, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, da-da-da-da-da-da, what we're more likely to do is repeat. When we could show up and notice that that's going on inside our minds, we could say, oh, look, there it is. Yes, this is going on. And I'm going to move into that and share some compassion with myself, right? And I'm simplifying right now. Trying not to do therapy in the moment.
I'm getting a free session.
So I'm really trying to simplify that. But when we notice ourselves speaking harshly to ourselves, we also want to pause.
Yeah.
Again, guilt is there to let us know, hey, I'm doing something against my moral compass. It's not for us to criticize, condemn, and complain ourselves, because that's going to set up more likelihood for us to not be able to look at what we're doing. We want to kind of notice, like, yeah, I did that, man. What could I do different? Yeah, I feel bad about that. Okay, yeah. What did I do that I feel bad about, and what could I do different? How could I update? And that's how we're going to do new and different. I don't know if that made any...
No, it does. I mean, self-talk is super important, and that was another one of those things that I roll my eyes at, like, get the hell out of here with that hippie shit, But it's nothing against hippies, but it's so important. It's imperative, because now what I used to learn, what I used to do was like, you dumb fuck, would be the way I talk to myself.
Yeah.
And people would say, would you talk to your daughter like that? I believe you've said stuff like that to me. Like, how would you feel if someone spoke to your wife or your daughter like that? And so that's kind of made it aware. And I also believe that she picks up on that. But the one thing that I was kind of going towards, and I got long-winded, is, which happens, going and apologizing to her.
Yeah.
Like I've shown up at my daughter's doorstep the next day after I text my ex-wife to make sure that it's okay because boundaries.
Yes.
Boundaries. Mm-hmm. If you want to have a good co-parenting relationship, learn about boundaries, how to set them and how to respect them. So, and I'd show up and not even with a new bike or anything, because that's the wrong message, but just showing up with myself like, yesterday didn't end the way I wanted it to. I want you to know that I love you. I'm always here for you, and, I'm with you on everything. So don't ever forget that.
Yeah, you're modeling. That's demonstrating that we're fallible. We're human, we're fallible. And when we make an error and we become aware of it, we can own it and repair it. It's really, really great. And the other thing is it's always okay to put words to what's going on. I think that some of us missed out on that learning. Some people know it naturally and some people don't, right? And when you were talking, I'm rewinding a little bit to when you were mentioning earlier, it takes a little bit of time to pair with your daughter after you haven't seen her for a couple of days. And it's also okay to just put words to that. And say, you know what, honey, I'm having a, whatever your words are, right? It's taken me a little bit to adapt. Or I'm having a moment, I'm pairing with you right now. Some version of that, putting words to whatever's going on, so that, what you see is what you get. And also, as the kids get older, it's also acceptable to say, hey, I want to hug you. Can I hug you? So that she knows that no is an acceptable answer, that if she doesn't want a hug from dad, she doesn't have to have a hug from dad, and dad's going to love her whether she wants a hug or not. That's powerful and important for her as an adult woman.
To know that it's her body.
That's her body, her choice. She might love you so much, Dad. Dad, I'm so excited to see you. I love you so much. Give me a big hug. Urgh. God, I love you, Dad. And sometimes it might be, Dad, I'm so pissed off at you. Don't fucking hug me, in her head. Of course, she's not going to say that because she's 12, but she probably says that in her head. Because she's heard the fuck word before, right? Yeah. But, I mean, it's so important for her to know that if I'm mad at you, Dad, I don't have to hug you. I could stand here 2 feet away from you, be mad at you, think you're just the biggest meanie pants ever, and you're going to love me no matter what. And I don't have to hug you if I don't want to. Because what happens is when kids have to hug, especially daughters and sons, when kids have to hug their parents, when they're mad at them and their parents make them hug them, you know what that teaches them? Down the road, they get married. Here they are, they're grown women. I'm a woman, so I'll talk about that, right? So here you are in your marriage, and I'm so mad at you, I can't stand it, but I have to hug you because when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to say, I don't want to hug. So here I am being incongruent, inconsistent, and I don't have the ability to say no. Well, that sets up a whole set of issues, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it really kind of does start from, childhood, adolescence, that it's okay to say no, and I'm going to love you no matter what.
So that is a foundational thing of teaching a daughter, or teaching any child, but we'll just talk about a daughter for a second, of how to respect and have ownership of her body, and setting those good boundaries to where she does not lose the say in what happens to her body.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, this afternoon, in just a couple of hours, I'm going over and I'm doing a talk for girls. And part of the talk is to be response-able. And put ourselves in wise situations. And one of the things that's so powerful is that, and I see this a lot with girls. I work with high school, like 18 and over, like I said, and a large population of college students. And the girls don't know that they could say no. Right. They don't know that they could say, and they don't even know it's their job to say no. So somebody will come on to them, somebody will come up to them, they'll want to have sex with them, and the girls don't know that they could say no. The girls don't know that they can start sex or flirting and then decide that they don't want to do it anymore. They don't know that they could say no. And I personally think that a lot of that starts when they're little girls and dad's mad or dad's forcing a hug and they don't have the right to say no, right? And so I think fostering that capacity in our children is really, really important. right? And still be loved. And so, anyways, that's part of what I'm going to be doing today, this afternoon, in a little bit, is teaching girls how to say no.
And where are you doing that at?
I'm going to someone's home. There's about 9 girls, and they're going off to college. So
Excellent.
I'm going to be teaching them some things.
That's
so
awesome.
It's all girls, yeah. But I mean, I thought about that just because of what you were just sharing just now.
Sure.
You know, allowing space for yes and no. Now, of course, we want to put that into context, right? It's not like, clean your room. No, fuck you. I don't want to clean my room. Oh, honey, I love you. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is allowing a space for her to say, I don't want to hug right now.
Yeah, but you're cleaning your fucking room.
But you're cleaning your fucking room. That's what you get to do. You could do it now, you could do it easy, or you could do it hard. But it's happening.
Yeah.
Right? So that kind of a thing, follow through, is vital.
See, and that right there, there's like 7 things popping off in my head, but like that right there, one of those deals about choosing your battles, is like, you know, finding that line. Okay, so like the other day with the washing her hair, right? Escalated and ended poorly. It ended me apologizing to her and us hugging it out, which she probably didn't want to hug me, you know, so whatever, I'll remember that next time. But the cleaning your room thing, you know, it's like, which one do you step away from and which one do you say, this is how you're going to do it because this is, so you just follow your gut. So when your gut tells you, you know what, just let her live in the room how she wants to live in it. Because I'm going to throw my ex under the bus a little bit, and this will probably be the only time I'll do it on this episode.
If you announce it, it doesn't count.
That's right. It's like, with all due respect, sir, you're a fucking asshole. I like how earlier you said, fuck you, dad, and then called him a meanie pants in like the next sentence.
Yeah. Complex, right?
Yeah. So she's a very neat person, which is a great trait to have, mind you.
Yes.
You know, and I'm a pretty neat and tidy person myself because the way I grew up was not that way. And so she's super neat. And so if anything's out of place, you know, it bothers her. So what'll happen is clean your room, no. And then mom comes and does it because it bothers her so much. And I'm like, hey, man, you're teaching her that if she just waits it out, her room's going to get cleaned.
You'll do it. Yep.
So I think her mom is now, I'm pretty sure has now just been like, okay, you're going to do it. And so one of those things, just kind of following what's important and what's not.
Yeah, because what's important to me is not going to be the same that's important to you, right?
Yeah.
And what's important to you is not going to be the same that's important to me. And so we want to kind of learn to tune into our gut. And, you know, it'll get heavy, tight, twisty. That's kind of noticing that. It's kind of an unpleasant. Or it will get light and feel steady, sturdy, calm, and that's more of a pleasant, right? And so tune into your gut. There's a great book out there called Blink. Anybody's interested in Blink, and it talks a bit about your gut. And I just kind of also wanted to say, you know, I'm mentioning things in a very simplistic terms, and I encourage people to do research and continue to learn and take what fits and leave what doesn't.
We're trying to shield the microphones from the wind. One of the benefits or one of the disadvantages of being up here on the patio is the wind and the trucks. So what's important to you is not what's important to me, and vice versa, but also like what's important to you is not going to be important to your child. You know, and maybe that was what you were saying, and I just heard it differently. But
no, that's not what I was saying. Okay. It's a good point to add to.
So like if for you it's super important that your clothes are starched and perfect and pristine and your hair is a certain way and makeup or if you're a man, makeup's your thing. Hey, and makeup's your thing, then that's your thing. But everything has to be a certain way, and that might not be your daughter's bag. She might not care about that at all. And so if you force that kind of stuff on her, outside of making sure that your daughter has all the tools, or son has all the tools necessary to you know, maintain hygiene, then you're forcing something on them that they don't want.
Yeah, and everything that's forced like that is a struggle, right?
Yeah.
If we try to force anything, it's gonna come right back, right?
And it's gonna be a wedge.
Yeah, and so to discipline is to teach, right? So as you teach your children, you get to teach them. right? Inform them, educate them so that they know when, just watch and see. Maybe I'm wrong. Just watch and see when you attempt to force your children how that goes, right? And just let me know how that goes versus informing them. It's a little different, but it'd be fascinating to kind of just observe oneself and see what works more effectively.
I picture when you say that, like something I literally witnessed was a woman holding a 3-year-old in one arm, dragging the 5-year-old by his foot out of a store because it was linoleum all the way out into the mall, and my daughter and I were there, and he was throwing a fit, and they had to go, and he wasn't having it. So she was dragging him on the floor out the store. They had somewhere to be, and my daughter and I just watched it. And so when you're telling me making them do something they don't want to do, that's what I'm picturing. But like, driving a wedge and things like that, it's like sports. Sports might not be your kid's thing.
That's right.
Like I'm really into martial arts, and I think that martial arts is extremely important for children. It has a lot of benefits other than the self-defense, and the protection factor, which I think is vital for girls. I think things like jiu-jitsu are just amazing for little girls to protect themselves because they need to be able to get out of situations from guys that outweigh them by 50 pounds. But I pushed it so much, she don't want to have anything to do with it now. So now I've just kind of like backed off, and I don't bring it up. I don't say anything about it. I go on about my way. And now she's starting to kind of like be interested in it again.
That old saying, attraction versus promotion. And also too, there are some things, right, that parents, to teach again, like this is just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so just the way it is still gets to happen. It's without the force. Does that make any sense? Like you're going to clean your room.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to happen. You could do it now and it could be pleasant, or you could do it the hard way, whatever that looks like, right? It's a very calm, matter-of-fact statement. It's happening. So you get to choose and pick how it's going to go down. But it's going down versus, I told you to clean your room, blah, blah, blah. That, just expect a fight because they're going to pick up on your energy and they're being forced. And it's that, again, a lot of this also starts early in life. And a lot of it also starts with, again, reparenting your inner self.
We're talking about forcing the issue and how well that will work out for you. And I think that's probably, we had to move inside because of the wind, but let's go ahead and we'll start wrapping this up since you can go on about your day.
We can both go on and do that next thing.
I'm going to pick up my daughter after this. I bought her a truck for her 12th birthday. And
tell everybody about your plan. I love it.
So I am doing it, is I didn't want to buy her concert tickets or anything like that for her birthday because she'll forget about that stuff. I want her to learn how to drive, and I'm teaching her she's driven my truck, but it's an automatic. And I think it's absolutely necessary that everybody knows how to drive a standard.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an important skill, not so much now because none of the cars have that, but right. It's just, I think that it's just, everybody's shaking their head right now. I don't need to explain it. So I found an old truck because my theory is I've got about 4 years before I'm the dumbest son of a bitch on the block, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with what I have to say. When she turns about 16 and she's off doing her thing, I think I'm going to have less and less of an impact for a while. Mm-hmm. And so I bought this truck, and we're going to restore it together. And it just so happens to be the same thing that my very first truck was. And it's a 73 Scout, and it's a tank. Like, I'm completely confident that she'll be fine in it. But I'm going to teach her how to work on the car. We're going to completely restore it from the ground up, and then she's going to learn how to drive in it. She does not get to get her license unless she can pass my driving test. And that's driving a standard, backing up to, hooking up, and pulling a trailer. And then the maintenance required to own a vehicle, and also roadside emergencies, not in a controlled environment. So like running the truck off of the road and getting out, blowing out a tire on a gravel road and ending up, kind of on uneven pavement, things like that. That might be a lot to put on her, but she's super excited about it. So I'm going to pick her up today because I got the truck, and I'm taking her, and she gets to clean it out. So it's
such quality time, right? She gets to spend quality time with Dad doing a task, and that is so esteem building. And these are memories that she's going to have her whole life. It's really, really solid.
And I think that the stuff that I can teach her with this and the things that she can teach herself and the confidence that she has will gain is, and this is all my theory, that when she's not listening to me anymore, or if it's my idea, it's a bad idea, she'll still have these things. She'll still know how to do these things. Like if she's stuck on the side of the road, she'll know how to protect herself. She'll know how to get out of the situation. She won't be a damsel in distress. And honestly, she'll require less input from a man.
And also, she knows that she's valuable and valued because Dad gave that to her, right? You're with her, you're connecting with her, you're attuning with her. And that's what love looks like. Love looks like paying attention, doing things together. And so you're actually demonstrating that. And so as she grows up, that's what love's going to look like, right? So she's more than likely to pick a man that does things with her, that treats her with respect, that loves and receives love, that does things together. And it's a relational model that will probably help her make choices on her best behalf a little bit more often. So it's really, really neat. Really neat. Yeah, so she's going to gain some information from this. Some of it she'll remember, some of it she won't, because she's got a 12-year-old brain. But what she's going to know is that she's loved, and that is powerful. And she's going to know relationally that she matters, and that's powerful. She's less likely to go marry a man that is going to treat her poorly, is going to verbally abuse her, that's going to do different things, right? So I think it's powerful on a variety of different levels that you're doing that with your daughter, and you're giving her that experience and that time and the sweet memories that she's going to gain that she'll be able to have for the rest of her life, right?
She'll meet somebody, like she'll model whatever behavior, or he will model. So like if you're abusive to her, if you
treat your kid poorly, your kid learns that's what love looks like. They don't do it consciously, it's unconscious, right? Yeah.
It's like those people, that girl, that friend, that sister-in-law, whoever, that like, why do you always pick these dirt bags?
Yeah.
It's like, well, look at what kind of man was there.
Yeah, I mean, my dad was emotionally unavailable and he wasn't very nice. We'll just throw it out there, right? So what kind of man did I pick the first half of my adult life?
Sure.
Emotionally unavailable men that weren't very nice, right? And so, it's only taken me till I'm 50 to update and learn new and different, right? So I had a lot of stuff to sort through. So again, my dad did the best he could with what he had.
Right.
It's still also that's what love looked like, right? So I chose men that weren't available. I chose men that weren't very nice because that's what I thought love looked like. Again, I didn't consciously do that. It wasn't like I'm going to set out to choose that kind of a man, right?
It's just
what I knew, right? And so, anywho, as you're doing these things with your daughter, what she's learning a different model. And as her brain is developing, that's what love looks like,
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's good stuff.
So the one thing I do tell guys a lot, and it's something I preach, is be the type of man you would want your daughter to marry, or be the type of man that you would want your son to be. It's just treat their wife, or treat your wife that way, treat your ex-wife that way, like just be respectful to the women in your life, and they will model that.
Yeah.
You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be present.
Yeah, and always be learning.
That's the thing too. Is
Glenn Ross. Instead of always be selling,
always be learning.
Always be learning. Right? Always be learning.
So, and you like you talked about your dad was he did the best he could, right?
He did. He really did.
Right, but why? Because that's what he knew.
That's right.
And so the whole point of this stuff is for us to shake that tree and to make us look at ourselves and be like, what don't I know about myself? And that's where you go to your wife. It's where you go. Don't go to you can go to your friends, but then you might seek help. You might find a professional just to go talk to, and just kind of let them get a read on you. Like just to take a baseline measurement of where you're at any given time. And it's like, I didn't realize I was such a narcissistic asshole, like I didn't realize that I'm just like, like if you've ever heard the expression, oh, you're just like your fucking father, that might be an indicator, that you need to take a look at certain things.
And that was one of the other things is I learned from my dad how he would act, how I don't want to act.
Some people are examples, some
Right.
people are warnings.
Yeah, and so one of the things I learned about my dad, he would say the meanest things, right? And so I learned from a very early life, and this is one of the gifts I got from my dad, is you can't unspeak a spoken word. So once you say something, you can't take it back. And if all of us just take a moment and think about some of the hard things that were said to us as children,
Yeah.
we could still remember those things, and it still hurts, and it's still loud in our memories, right? So as a parent, just keep this in mind. You can't unspeak a spoken word. You can't take it back. Once you say that, it's out there, and that sticks in a kid's brain. Now, these are going to happen, right? Let's face it. We're just human. We're going to say things, and we're like, oh, crap, I wish I didn't say that, and we'll repair it to the best of our ability. However,
As soon as possible.
as soon as possible, right? It's always great to own our behavior and apologize. We talked about that and repair it. But yeah, you can't unspeak a spoken word.
Can't unring a bell.
You cannot. I love it. You're right. Can't unring a bell.
You take a plate. Like I have a joke that I tell with one of my buddies, but it's not. It's not a joke. It's just making light of it. But if you take a plate and throw it on the ground and break it, and then you glue it back together, and you're like, "I'm sorry, plate." The cracks are still there.
Right.
I mean, you've tried to do the best you can to make it not there, but the cracks are still there. The glue is still there.
Yeah.
The damage has been done. So pause. Don't say shit. Because I've done it too, and then you get done, and you're like, And a lot of us will once you've done it, well, I'm going to ride this thing out so I can make myself right.
0 to 10. Where you at?
Yeah.
Pay attention.
And I like my daughter, she knows, Dad, I need a timeout, or I need to take a minute. But all right, so we've covered a lot of great stuff, and I really, really appreciate you doing this. I really appreciate you. I'm super grateful for you. I love you so much.
I really appreciate you. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited and thrilled about this podcast and what you're going to do and all the people you're going to connect with and help. I'm thrilled for you, and I just love you.
I love you too. And I'm going to have you back on because there's so much more that we need to talk about. I think there's so many things that you can bring to this, and I know that I see the work that you do with people. I know that I know what your motives are. I can see your true self. I know what's behind it, and I know how good and kind and loving and powerful you are. If you've ever met Debbie, she's 5. How tall are you?
I'm 5'2".
But she's got a 10-foot shadow. She's a
love
very,
that.
very powerful person that I just adore. So, real quickly leaving, if you could, tomorrow, hopefully not, say you're just gone, you disappear, you get hit by a truck.
Okay.
And you wanted to pass on something to parents about relating, just something quick. What is one thing that you could tell them?
That's a great question, and I'm pausing for a moment. And I think we don't have to repeat what was done. We have options, we have choices. And we can repeat what was done because some of the stuff that was done is brilliant and wonderful and loving and connecting and kind, right? So yes, by all means, that's wonderful stuff to repeat. But we're not stuck. We're not crystallized. As long as we're living, we're adaptive and malleable, and pay attention to who you are and how you show up. Pay attention. I think that's it. Be in your skin. Be the person you believe in. In the morning when I wake up, I invite God, my version of God, into myself, and I ask God to help me be the woman He would have me be all day long. And then when I go to sleep at night, I say, thank you, God, for helping me be the woman you would have me be all day long. And thank you for all the lessons I've learned, even the painful ones, right?
Sure.
Because every day we learn stuff, right? And I say thank you for that. And I think if I was to get hit tomorrow, if I could have a legacy, since I was unable to have children, my legacy would be to help people live inside their skin and be the best version of them that they can be as often as possible.
And if they want to learn how to do that, where can they find you?
You could Google my name, Debbi Dunbar, Dunbar, LPC, Fort Worth, or Debbi Dunbar, EMDR therapist, Fort Worth.
Okay, excellent. All that will be in the show notes. Thank you so much. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Circle of Dads podcast. I appreciate all the support, and I appreciate just this opportunity. I'm very grateful for it, and I'm very grateful to be in this position. Remember, fellas, love runs downhill. We chase after them until the day we die.